folder? He's got one. Okay, thank you all for coming today. I noticed everybody standing up. Sorry about that. We should have, this is about all we could do today to accommodate the space. So we're glad to have this as the House Motor Vehicles Committee meeting. And we're going to take up several bills today. And I thank all the committee members for getting here today in spite of all the other committees that are meeting. I'm going to ask Representative Battles to open us a word of prayer.
Father, we thank you for your love for us. We thank you for living in a great state and the privilege of service. We don't take that lightly, and we just pray that everything that we do, that we would do that under your leadership and guidance. Bless this time together, and may it be used to bring honor to you. For these things I ask in Christ's name. Amen.
Amen. We're going to start with House Bill 925. Is Chairman Martin here? I don't see him. Chairman Martin here. Pardon? He's still in the committee meeting? Okay. Well, if Chairman Martin is not here, then we will. We're going to move on. How many people are here on the Representative Epps' bill on the? Okay. All right. Well, any of the tag bills, Representative Talton bill? Okay, John, I see you over there. All right. I'm going to take up House Bill 180. And before I start that, I want you to know that special tags have been of interest here for a long time. Oh, wait a second. Wait a second. You are here. Well, that's unusual, but I okay. Chairman Martin, you're on. We're going with House Bill 925. You come over to the microphone. We'll get you on here. And this is a hearing only on this bill. There'll be no vote taken on it. 925.
Mr. Chairman, are you?
You're on.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I have House Bill 925 LC 400537 to present to the committee today. The proposition is quite simple, members of the committee and Mr. Chairman. We have a new technology that's coming around by a company called Tesla, a little outfit out of California. That's selling a new type of vehicle, one, quite frankly, that I'm not that familiar with, but it appears that a number of people around the country are quite so. And as you may have heard, I have introduced legislation that is in another committee to talk about the tax credits that go on this vehicle and others of its type, zero-emission vehicles. In the process of the discussion of those tax credits, representatives from Tesla approached me because the tax credit was going to affect their buyers, and in the process they were talking about how they sell and what they can do in Georgia, and they intimated to me that they were limited at a number of vehicles, 150 vehicles a year, and quite frankly I asked them why, and we got into a little bit of the whys and what fors, and I wanted to remove market impediments for this kind of new technology. So this bill seeks to just do that by moving from 150 vehicles to 1,500, the number that this manufacturer can sell in the state of Georgia. Specifically, I want to be absolutely clear. It's late in the session. It's day 24 today, I believe, 25 tomorrow. We have a franchise dealer system in Georgia that has worked well for a number of years. Some people may be for that. Some people may not be. I do not wish to and will not personally enter into the discussion of that. That's not what this bill is about. But we have this technology. People in the state of Georgia wish to buy this technology and can do so in an indirect way, is my understanding. Perhaps there'll be speakers that can address that further and bring the vehicles into Georgia. And I just think to help the free market system and not bother the market that is in place for our traditional franchisors and franchisees and dealers, we could draft a narrowly construed bill to let this technology come in while the market decides what's going to happen. Because this particular manufacturer may find out over time that they need a dealer network or want a dealer network, or who knows what the market will bear. I can't stand here today and tell you that the cell phone market is the same way today that it was when it came out. I know when the cell phone market came out, one needed to go into a store back in the 80s and be talked to and taught how to carry the brickophones and those sorts of things. And we've seen how those have evolved over the time, in that you can now order them and change them and set up your email on them or change the number from one to another all on your own. So over time, I think the new technology will find its way into the marketplace that the customer designs. So I wish for this bill to create an interim step where this technology can evolve in Georgia, and our residents of the state of Georgia can continue to avail themselves of it while discussions are had at a much higher level with me than me between the manufacturer and the people that know more about the dealers and franchise business in the state. But right now, today, I respect the chair's wish not to have a vote on it today, but would respectfully ask that we do, before this session and before day 30, we lose the opportunity to move this bill forward and give the citizens of Georgia the ability to purchase these cars without jumping through hoops. Move the number from 150 to 1,500. If the chair members in the committee think 1,500 is too big a jump, I'm certainly up for the discussion. But I think they have the ability to sell certainly more than the 150, and I would certainly hate to stand and go home from here this year by constraining the market artificially. Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I'll answer any questions.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Are there questions for the author? Pretty simple measure. Are there other people who would like to speak for the bill? Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Other speakers would like to speak? Yeah, come on forward and give me your name, please. Oh, fine. Okay. I can't even see you back there. All right. Sure, absolutely. More the merrier. Introduce yourselves to the committee, and here we go.
Mr. Chairman, members of the committee, my name is Bruce Bowers. I'm with the firm of Massey, Watson, Bowers, and Hembry, and we represent Tesla Motors here in Georgia. I have with me Dermot O'Connell. He's an executive with Tesla, and he'll be speaking after I bring to your attention just a few brief matters. As Chairman Martin said, this is a bill about allowing Georgians to choose to buy vehicles which they're constrained to buy right now. Under the Georgia law as it exists today, Georgians can buy no more than 150 Tesla vehicles in the state of Georgia from the Georgia showroom. That's an exemption in existing law. If a Georgian wants to buy, if someone wants to buy that 151st vehicle or any other vehicles like that, they have to contract through California and have a vehicle shipped through California. So there are already Georgians who are looking to buy these vehicles. 315 were sold last year. Over 200 of those were sold through California, and then they have to be delivered here. So we're talking about demand that exists from Georgians who want to buy something, and they are artificially constrained by existing law from being able to do that. And it's a very simple proposition that we believe that Georgians ought to have the choice to go do that. This bill does not affect any existing dealer. It does not affect any existing franchise agreement. There is no dealer who will lose a sale tomorrow or the next day as a result of people being able to buy directly from Tesla. And there's no dealership that's affected, and there's no Georgian who will lose a job as a result of this. As a matter of fact, Tesla has opened up a service center that as of today, when I was there this morning counting heads, there were 15 Georgians who are now working in the Tesla service center from the facility that was created there. So again, it's a simple bill that allows Georgians the choice as to whether they want to contractually buy a vehicle directly from the manufacturer without without having to buy through the state of California or somewhere else. I'm going to let Mr. O'Connell do most of the talking after that
Fine.
because he's with Tesla. But if there
Come
are
on,
any
Mr.
questions,
O'Connell.
I'll stay here also.
You're recognized.
Thank you very much, Mr. Chairman. As Bruce said, my name is Dermot O'Connell. I'm the Vice President for Corporate Development at Tesla Motors. And Bruce, having covered some of the, anticipating some of the criticisms of our approach, I'd like to talk to you a little bit more about the philosophy. The company was founded 10 years ago in California by electrical engineers who were passionate about new forms of transportation for reasons associated with national security, with climate, and so forth. They're very familiar with the properties of lithium-ion battery technology that have been developed for consumer electronics and cell phones. The idea was to develop a vehicle-scale battery that would power a new kind of electric vehicle, a vehicle that could cover 250 miles in a single charge, that could display all of the power of a supercar, 0 to 60 in 3.7 seconds for our first car, and that could be itself attractive and could stimulate a whole new market. So fundamentally, the mission of this company is to stimulate a new market for electric vehicles. We are going to be successful over the course of time by developing and selling our own vehicles, but also by stimulating competition in the marketplace, and happily that's happening. The reason why we sell our cars directly and why we service our cars directly is that this is fundamentally innovative technology. We're asking people to cross a bridge from the technology that they're familiar with, that we're all familiar with for generations, to understand it. It's fundamentally an educational process. It requires multiple visits to our stores and service centers and to our websites to become comfortable with the technology. It requires a service experience for our customers, which is so intimate that we're helping people to be comfortable gain comfort over the course of time in the use and the maintenance of their vehicles. So this is fundamentally what animates our direct sales model. We do not exclude over the course of time that as we develop our sales into the hundreds and 200,000s of units, that we wouldn't at some point enter into franchise dealer models. But frankly, right now, the volumes that we are selling, and by the way, these vehicles are produced by American workers in the United States. The vehicles we're producing are at about a rate of 20,000 units a year. About a third of those go to Europe. About a third of those are going to be going to Asia. The rest placed throughout the United States through our sales and service model. As we grow, as we offer our next vehicle, a higher volume vehicle, it's conceivable that we will move to a more hybridized distribution model. But for the present, we feel passionately that this is fundamental to the success of this technology, and that is fundamentally the business we're in. It's about Tesla Motors, but it's about electric vehicles more broadly, and we believe this is critical to the success of electric vehicles and to the success of our enterprise. Thank you very much for your consideration.
Thank you, Mr. O'Connell. Are there any questions for the witness, Representative Douglas? Hold on a second. Put your light on. Wait a second. I think we just died. Let's see. There you go.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. He spoke earlier about the site and where it was located. Where was it located?
In Marietta?
Okay. Service center, yes.
Marietta, right off North Loop and I-75.
Okay, Marietta. Okay.
Okay. Chairman Battle. You want?
Thank you. There we are. Thank you for being here. I had a couple of questions, and I received a visit the other day, and I'm going to ask the first question that I posed to them. As it is, we depend on motor fuel tax for our infrastructure, our road system. Total electric vehicle. They're not using any gas or fuel. Have you looked in how that we can get the benefits? You're going to be driving on our roads in Georgia, and you already are. And I don't know that we're getting any benefits out of the repairs that we need to do to the road because of the extra cars that you're bringing in.
Sure. I understand the point. I would suggest in the first instance that there are other benefits that the driving our vehicles are producing. But this is a very good point. It's being studied, and different solutions are being applied across the country. Currently, roads are repaired through the gasoline tax. The truth is that even with a hybrid vehicle, you're paying less tax per mile and arguably contributing less. But one of the ways that this is being handled for electric vehicles, which are excluded, as you note, from from gas tax is that a fee is being assessed in certain states, and that fee is calculated based on a proxy vehicle that would be paying so much in gas tax over the course of time. But the philosophical point is a gas tax has always been a rough way of calculating how many miles you travel, and that's probably the common denominator that we should go back to when we consider this, whether it's a straight fee as is being applied in other states, or whether we continue with some form of gas tax taking into account how much gas or how efficient your vehicle is. It could be a sliding scale. The other thing that I would note, though, is that electric vehicle drivers are paying taxes on their electricity. So if there is a taxation, I recognize that that doesn't go into the road maintenance fund.
If I may add to that,
Yes.
Chairman, respectfully, this is not a Tesla issue. It is an issue of transportation policy and transportation funding policy all over the country. Tesla sells the vehicles it sells here in the United States, but and I'm not picking anybody, but the fact is that there are a lot of other manufacturers who both do hybrid electric, dual fuel sources. There are other pure electric vehicles, the Nissan Leaf, for example, and all of these different technologies and all these vehicles made by all of these different manufacturers and sold by all the different ways things can be sold here in Georgia are all affected by that. It affects all of us. So it's not per se a Tesla issue so much as it's a transportation policy issue that folks like you and a lot of other folks are going to have to make some very serious decisions about over the next several years.
One more question. Yep, sure. Absolutely.
One of the issues that we look at as being a team player or being competitive on the same level field. Dealers in Georgia, and I'm sure all across the United States, has spent literally billions of dollars on showrooms, facilities where people can come in and look at the vehicle, buy the vehicle, have it serviced there. I know that's not the program that you use, but under the system that is presently used, or kind of a custom of what we have, there is a dealership, there is a physical building, and I guess I asked a question: why there cannot be and go through the same process as anyone else, Ford, General Motors, Dodge, Chrysler? You cannot have a physical location in Georgia.
Well, sir, we do have a physical location in Georgia.
I'm talking about a dealership.
Understood. Well, we regard it as a store. Let me speak to this issue. First of all, the history of franchise dealer law across the country and state by state is one where it grew up to prevent intra-brand competition. So Smith Ford from having to compete with Ford Motor Company. That's the origin. That's the legislative intent that's embedded in most of these laws. I don't want to speak directly to Georgia law. I'm not proficient in that. But that's the fundamental philosophy. Now, Tesla coming to the market without any franchise dealers is not disadvantaging or potentially disadvantaging any franchise dealer. We would never eviscerate a contract that we have with an existing franchise dealer. We don't have any. So the question becomes, really, should government, in my mind, humbly, should government be legislating a business model simply because it's a historical artifact of the franchise dealer manufacturer law? Now, as it pertains to our business, as I perhaps went too quickly before, the small volumes that we are currently delivering would be disadvantaged in a dealer environment. For one thing, the nature of the dealer experience, and I know there are many in this room who can speak much more likely on this point, is to move volume. We're moving very small numbers, and in a showroom environment where our technology would be standing next to the incumbent technology, internal combustion engine, there would be fundamentally a disincentive for that salesperson to be moving our technology, which is much more intensive, much more educationally intensive, as I suggested, versus what they have right now. Also, the volumes are so small that it's arguably not worth the investment for that dealer. And then there's a third point, and that is, it is true that Nissan is selling the Leaf through their existing franchise dealer system, and you could argue, well, that this is working for them. The truth is, Nissan has access to tremendous marketing dollars to pull that product through the channel. We do not have that. We do not do advertising. Our stores and our service centers are our marketing vehicle.
And if I can add to that also, to come back to your point about a physical location, if you drive up I-75 and get off at the North Loop, about a mile to the west side, there is a Tesla store there. You know, it's leased from a property owner who's paying Cobb County property taxes. It's got folks who work there who are able to demonstrate and discuss and educate folks about the technology. So there is a physical store that is present in Cobb County now. My understanding is there are actually other locations that are being scouted right now for that same purpose outside of Cobb County. But there is that physical presence where, again, the property taxes are paid locally, et cetera. It's just not a dealership from which vehicles are sold in a dealer model.
Okay, Representative Stover. I think you're on. I'm sorry. Wait a second. Let me go in sequence. You have your button pushed. Let me. Who's on 8? Representative Caldwell.
Well, sir, I don't want to speak to the origin of the 150 limit. I think it had to do with historical law here. It was not an exemption which we sought. It was in the law when we came to the state. The fact is that we are selling beyond that number on an annualized basis, and any vehicle that we sell from 151 on has to be bought directly from the company in California and drop shipped to that customer here in Georgia. Well, sir, for the reasons I stated, that this is fundamentally about educating the population to the merits of electric vehicle technology. That's a bad fit for the existing dealer model for a number of reasons. The volumes are too low. There are cross incentives that would work against our technology relative to the gasoline technology vehicles that they would also have to be selling just to support the business. And so in this early stage of the development of the technology, the development of our brand, we believe that this is fundamental, that we be educating, spending the time educating the customers, investing in servicing those vehicles, giving life to the brand, giving life to the technology, with the very real possibility that over the course of time, as we're selling hundreds of thousands of vehicles, the dealer model is well suited to a number of things, expanding geography quickly. And moving high volume. I mean, we sell vehicles one at a time. I'd love to be in a position to sell 100 at a time. That's a point in the future when a franchise dealer model might make sense for us. But for the present, it's critical to the success of the enterprise that we be doing this ourselves.
Follow up.
Sure. Yeah.
How much better, how much more education do you get to set up a store like everybody else so people can come in and look and hear about it?
Well, sir, we are setting up stores. And in fact, we would be setting up more stores and employing more Georgians in those stores if we had the allowance to sell more vehicles directly as we were doing.
Thank you, Mr. Caldwell. Recognize Representative Dutt.
Yes, sir. I appreciate that. That line of questioning, have every unit purchased, are they purchased directly from the manufacturer?
For the first 150, they are purchased through the store from the manufacturer. For 154, they are purchased directly from us. But in any event, you're buying from the manufacturer.
Okay. My question is, how will Georgia's lemon law affect these units? I know they're specialized.
So in every state where we operate, the first thing we do is seek a license to operate. Under that license, when we can be granted a license, when the law facilitates that, we are bound by all of the strictures of that dealer license that any franchise dealer would have. So all of the lemon laws apply to us equally as they do to any other dealer. And we would handle those. We would handle
a dealer's license?
Actually, if I may real quickly here, and I'm a member of the bar, but I'm not giving legal advice or anything like that. But I will tell you two things that is not legal advice or a legal opinion. One, go ask the Georgia Office of Consumer Protection, I believe it's called now, Consumer Advocacy. We've discussed with them. They are adamantly clear that they believe Tesla is covered currently by the Georgia Lemon Law. And if you go read the Georgia Lemon Law, it's actually very, very clear. It applies to a manufacturer and a consumer. And to the extent it discusses a dealer at all, there's one particular section regarding dealers, and then dealers are sprinkled through there, but the dealers are carved out of the chain. I mean, they are not liable in any way. It is a consumer to a manufacturer. Tesla is a manufacturer under the existing Lemon Law, and the consumers, we all know who they are. And again, I commend you to go ask the Consumer Protection Division. I have, and they've said it's clear that Tesla would be covered by the Lemon Law for any vehicle that is sold through any channel.
Okay, no, I appreciate that, because my concern is specialized equipment, specialized units, how that fits in with our lemon law, so I appreciate that.
Okay. Representative Stover.
If I'm not mistaken, the Tesla S sells for about $69,900.
The base price actually starts in the low 70s. You
Okay.
can back out some federal tax credits and some state level tax credits.
Okay, and that's your base model.
That's the base.
What's your
model.
average selling price on a vehicle?
We don't actually release that publicly.
Okay.
We're a public company, and we have some strictures on what we can and will release. But you can, with options, you can certainly get the delivered price of the vehicle up to $100,000.
Okay, so to kind of answer, I think, Chairman Battle's question, what would happen as far as your vehicles being brought here? 1,500 vehicles would equate to at least $6.8 million in TVAT fees, which could then be used for the roads here within the state, because a portion of that goes back to the state. Is that not correct?
You're talking about title ad valorem tax?
Yeah.
Yeah. I mean,
So
the answer to
we
that
would
is-
have 6.8 million if all 1,500 vehicles were sold here within the state at the low end price.
I'm sorry.
It's more a
Okay.
statement to Chairman Battles. So,
I'm sorry.
I respectfully, I don't think the tax issue, it does not change the collection of Georgia
No,
taxes.
it doesn't.
At all. There's
Right.
There's no change whether it is
Right.
purchased out of California, bought here, and then it's registered.
Right.
No, that's
so it
right.
does not
That's right.
impact that.
But the point is, the way that we pay for roads on electric vehicles is through the taxes that we're collecting through the title ad valorem tax right now. So that's
I
part
think
of
that,
how we.
I think that goes to the general fund.
Yeah.
Stover.
So we can direct it.
Yeah. Sure. Mr. Chairman, you come on up and settle this out for us, will you? Real quick.
I think the gentleman makes a good point. And there's a lot of people want to speak, and I don't want to belabor the situation, but Chairman Battles makes a good point. Representative makes a good point. I mean, if we sell a lot of these cars are sold, they'll be registered here, and the TAVT will be paid in Georgia. Chairman Battles, you make a good point, and Mr. Bowers mentioned it. I drive a hybrid car that I've spent $1,150 in gas since last Memorial Day. Previously, in my car, I spent about $450 a month. Do the math. It's about $3,500 versus $1,100. So I personally am paying less thing. I think the tax policy around the fuel tax, the president yesterday issued new CAFE standards for medium and large industrial type vehicles. So I think that's certainly a question we have to address, and we can do that. But I think the gentleman makes a point of a free market. If we allow people to buy them, they'll come here. There'll be value that'll pay title ad valorem tax, and we'll have that opportunity. And I'll get out of the way from the committee, but to the gentleman's question about why now and why a store and whatever, they do have a store here, and I would remind the committee, and I do this as a proud American with a company that did it. There's a little outfit out there in California that Steve Jobs started, and when they started selling things, they only sold them in Apple stores. You couldn't buy an Apple computer any place but an Apple store. And it got kind of mainstream after that, and you can get one pretty much anywhere. And there's a lot of people, because that technology made it, selling out of Apple stores, that now you can buy them in virtually Walmart and Best Buy and over the internet and everywhere else, employing a lot of people around the country. I wonder what would have happened if they had been blocked from only selling those things in Apple stores and that technology hadn't worked out for us in the U.S.
Okay, thank you. Are there any more questions of the witnesses here? Thank you, gentlemen, for coming today and making us aware of this proposition.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
We're going to hear from the other side now, and I'm going to ask Leah Kirshner to come up. Leah, if you'll just tell us who you represent. And
good afternoon. First, I want to thank Chairman Rice and members of the committee for giving me the opportunity to speak. My name is Leah Kirshner. I'm the Vice President and General Counsel with the Georgia Automobile Dealers Association. First, I want to address a statement that was made that the current law creates a market impediment for consumers to buy Teslas. That's actually not true. Consumers could buy Teslas and can buy Teslas, and in fact, according to the Atlanta Business Chronicle, 500 Teslas have been delivered in the state of Georgia. Tesla could sell vehicles through dealers, just like other manufacturers. This body, the General Assembly, has recognized the importance of the franchise system, both through a constitutional amendment passed by the citizens of this state and through Georgia law. Unlike some states, which completely prohibit a manufacturer-owned dealerships, Georgia doesn't actually do that. We actually have a provision in our law which allows manufacturers to own up to a 45% interest in a dealership. We also have another exception in our law, and this is the exception under which Tesla currently operates, which allows a manufacturer to sell vehicles directly to consumers if the vehicles are custom designed and sales are limited up to 150 vehicles per year. Now, arguably, I'm not so sure that Tesla vehicles are actually custom designed, but having said that, they have a license, they have a dealership, and they have been selling vehicles. Because it appears that Tesla has gone beyond that 150, or certainly intends to go beyond that, they're here asking for really an exception to the law. They're asking for you to expand the law. The problem is, this isn't a bill that's only going to affect Tesla. It actually opens the doors for other manufacturers to come into Georgia, sell zero emissions vehicles, up to 1,500 of them, and completely bypass the franchise system that has been around for over 100 years, works well, is cost competitive, and good for the consumer. Another thing that was testified to is that this direct sales model is needed because of the innovative technology. Well, I think you'd all agree that vehicles have evolved quite a bit over the years. Mr. Bowers himself listed a number of different technologies. And guess what? All those vehicles are sold through dealers. Dealers evolve too. They change with vehicles. They know how to sell vehicles. They know how to address emerging technologies. Who better to sell vehicles than dealerships? Georgia's law, as it is a fair balance. It allows a manufacturer, if it wants to participate in the ownership of a dealership up to 45%, while maintaining the important franchise system. Those are all my comments. We actually have an actual dealer here, and I'll ask Mr. Rice to call on him. He's going to talk a little bit more about the franchise system.
Mr. Prince, I'm going to recognize you to come up and speak on this. Just tell us where you're from and the dealership you have.
Thank you, Chairman Rice, and ladies and gentlemen, I appreciate you hearing my comments today. I'm John Prince. I have been a dealer for 48 years, and I have 8 different rooftops. I am a dealer. I have 3 GM dealerships located in Tifton, Georgia, Albany, Georgia, Valdosta, Georgia. I'm a Ford dealer in Douglas, Georgia. In Tifton, I also have Toyota, Honda. I have Mazda in Valdosta. I am a heavy-duty truck dealer in Albany, Georgia with Peterbilt. I'm a heavy-duty truck dealer in Tifton, Georgia with 2 franchises, Volvo and Peterbilt. So I am up to my eyeballs in the automobile and truck and transportation industry. What I would like to talk to you a little bit about is that the Georgia Auto Dealers, the GADA, as we refer to it, we have over 500 dealer members representing both domestic and import vehicles. These dealers hire over 30,000 employees in the state of Georgia. That is a huge number of employees. Automobile dealers nationwide represent 14% of all retail sales in the United States. I mean, that is a huge dollar amount. We pay billions of dollars in annual taxes and local taxes, including personal property taxes on our equipment, on our inventories, on our parts departments, on our furnitures and fixtures, and on our machinery and shop equipment, not to count the real estate ad valorem taxes that we pay. The franchise system is a proven, cost-effective method for distribution, sales, and service of motor vehicles. It allows manufacturers to do what they do best, build the vehicles, and the dealers to do what they do best, sell and service those vehicles. Georgia's new vehicle dealers provide competition for consumers. Competition is the most effective means of driving down cost. And I can tell you every day, I have customers come in, they have printed out a copy of my invoice. They know what my cost of a car is already. I mean, competition is so keen out there. I literally do not make profits in new car departments. If it was not for used cars, service, parts, body, and our finance and insurance business, we would not make money in the new car department. The competition is the most effective means of driving down cost, and after more than 100 years of intense competition between dealers, today's independent dealer franchise system has evolved into the most efficient and most cost-effective way of selling and servicing vehicles. The distribution and sale of motor vehicles is vital to Georgia's economy. The maintenance of a strong dealership network is essential to providing Georgians with reliable vehicles and service repairs at competitive prices. You won't go into a dealership today without finding some board displayed somewhere showing prices. You know, we show them up front. You know what it's going to cost you. We give estimates when requested to give estimates of repairs. We are highly competitive with all of our, anything from Goodyears to independent shops. We want to be competitive. Many new vehicle dealerships have been in their communities for generations. As I mentioned, I've been there 48 years. My dad was a dealer in the Carolinas for over 30 years prior to that. And I operated up there after he passed away, and then I moved to Georgia and bought my own little franchise, selling 15 cars a month. I was able to build buildings, selling less than 180 vehicles a year. And I hear that there's someone else is selling over 300. I have franchises now that don't sell 300. And yet I have buildings, grounds, facilities, and buildings on those. New vehicle dealers are bound by long-standing ties to their local customers and often advocate for consumers in disputes with automobile manufacturers. The dealer becomes the go-between between the customer and the manufacturer in a lot of instances. The dealers pick up cost of repairs or service even when the manufacturers go out of business. Remember, just a few short years ago, you know, some of the names. Plymouth is gone. Saab, Oldsmobile, Pontiac, Saturn, Daewoo, and an electric car, Fisher. They're gone. The dealers that were still left in our communities still picked up a lot of cost and looked after their customers' vehicles for them, even though the manufacturers terminated those franchises or went out of business or declared bankruptcy. Local dealerships hire local people. They're involved in and have a stake in their local communities. When the going gets tough, a local business can't and won't just close the doors and walk away. Local dealerships are accountable to their customers. We live in our local communities. We go to school. Our children, our grandchildren are in school with your children and grandchildren. I go to church, and when I'm at church, I'm seeing my customers. And believe me, even though they probably shouldn't, when I walk outside with them, they're going to tell me if something's wrong with their car. And I am listed in the phone book. You know how to get in touch with me. I don't hide and I don't run, and most of the dealers in the state are that way. We want to service our customers. We're listed in the phone book, and you can find us because we're visible in our communities. New vehicle dealerships provide an efficient distribution system. The franchise system supports dealerships so they can help meet the transportation needs of our customers. We provide one-stop shopping for new vehicles, trade-ins, financing, and education about the vehicles. We also raise our children in our communities. We educate our children at our state-run education facilities. They come back to be productive citizens in our communities. Dealers are so community involved. We give so much of our time to not-for-profit entities. We make contributions to just about any and every cause that you can possibly think of. And we are part of Georgia and part of our cities and our towns and our communities. I thank you for being able to listen to me, and I would certainly entertain any questions that I could.
Thank you, Mr. Prince. Any questions for Mr. Prince or Ms. Kirshner? See no questions. I appreciate you coming, John. Thank you very much for coming up today. That ends the hearing on this bill. Chairman Martin, do you have any summary you'd like to do quickly? We need to move on.
I'll be quick. I know you're behind, and I really mean it this time. I thank the committee. There's a lot said. And the gentleman, I have great respect. 48 years, I believe he said, in the business. And I would just say this, that the folks from Tesla will, to be clear, they seek to have a physical presence here. And they would hire local people, and they would also, do that in their stores. And they would do that in as a good neighbor to our current dealer network. So I don't want anybody, as I said when I came up here, I'm not here to litigate the franchise dealer law in the state of Georgia. That's working right. It came out over time. The lady said that dealers have evolved over time with new technologies. Nobody meant to say that the dealers and the folks that work there are not sharp and can't evolve. And there's computers in our cars today that have more processing power than the computer that took the people to the moon. And that is a literally true statement. So surely that happens. But this vehicle is so much different. This vehicle is like comparing my car to, a F-18 aircraft. It's just different. And I would respectfully, ask the gentleman, I'll ask him outside because he seems like a fine fellow to get to know. But he said he doesn't make a lot of money selling new cars. He makes it on service. These vehicles, there aren't a lot of used ones going around. There's not going to be somebody that's necessarily going to come in. I'm not going to go trade my XYZ, car in on one. So it's a different model. So all I would do is ask the committee to respectfully think about, what the gentleman said, that our franchise laws are working. We're not looking to break those, take those people out of business, do anything with that. But give this an opportunity and think about it. And maybe my analogy wasn't the best one in the world. But I'd ask you again, what would it have been if government had kept Apple from only selling in Apple stores and that company had failed back a few years ago? How many people would be looking for employment? And what would most of y'all, I bet if half of the committee's probably got an iPhone up there. I unfortunately have Samsung, but I would just ask the committee to keep that. We're not trying to do anything with that network, but we would respectfully like to open it up and let the free market work in Georgia for this.
Thank you, Chairman Martin. I would appreciate it if you and the dealership representatives here in GADA or others could spend a little time together and talk about this a little bit more before we get well. I'm not even going to comment on that one, Mr. Chairman. But okay. All right. Thank you so much. All right. That concludes the hearing on 925. We're going to go in order of the number of people standing on their feet. I think probably is the way we'll call the next bill. And for members of the committee, we're gonna move ahead fairly rapidly after this next consideration, and hopefully I just ask you to bear with us here. Before we get started, I'm going to take up some of the special tag bills here, and particularly I'm going to recognize Representative Talton for House Bill 180 right now. If you could just get up to the microphone there, Mr. Representative Chairman Talton. I'm sorry. Chairman Talton, thank you for coming today. If you just take the microphone, I appreciate it. In your to members of the committee, in your folder there are a couple different pieces of information with regard to tags that'll come up. These are all special tags. The Georgia Audits and Accounts Performance people have published a finding on special license plates, which should be of interest to you in terms of the revenues that are generated and where they go. Also, the Department of Natural Resources, which is the recipient of the non-game wildlife funds, have also published a statement in terms of DNR and their interest in the wildlife funds. I think let me just preface your comments for a moment on House Bill 180 by saying generally we've looked at these special tags over the years. The basic price for a special tag right now is the $25 that you normally would pay, plus $35 for registration of a special tag. The bills have to do with the splits of that revenue, and one of the bills, Representative Epps' bill, has to do with a reduction in the amount of price for the wildlife, non-game wildlife tags. There are the basic differences in some of the bills you'll have before you. Chairman Talton, if you'll just comment on 180, I'd appreciate it.
Okay. Thank you, Mr. Chairman, and members of the committee. I appreciate this opportunity.
Yeah.
And also,
do you have the substitute in front of you, Representative?
Just have 180, section LC 39054S.
No. 06.
I don't have that.
Okay. Why don't you give Representative Talton? This bill has been a moving object here today, so I thank Ms. Dowdy for her work on this bill in a critical period of time, and Chairman Talton's indulgence on it.
And like I said earlier, I appreciate you and so much for helping walk this thing along with me, and Mr. Ebbs, Representative Ebbs, and I believe council. And I'm just going to briefly on this, what this legislation will do is this legislation will change the allocation of special license plate fees by revising the fees portion that is deposited into the state general fund, and the fees portion that is transferred to the funds of the individual specialized license plate sponsoring organization. Under current law, for most category, the specialized license plates, the current $35 toll fee payable to both new and renewable is allocated as following: $25 deposited into the general fund, $10 deposited into the sponsoring organization, the general fund, and among remittance to the sponsoring organization. This is the only thing this bill is done, and I ask you to chime in as you have with helping me to still get it over to the other members exactly what is what. But when Georgia had a kind of a downfall in the economy, we had changed the law to put the money back into the general fund and give the biggest portion to the general fund and the other portion to the organization. So now what I'm just asking to do is to reverse that and give the largest portion back to the organizations which it's come from.
Okay, let me just comment for the benefit of the committee and those in the audience here today. There are 3 bills on our list today. 2 of them by Representative Epps and 180 by Mr. Talton. For the members of the committee, 881 is the bill which provides a special tag for Grady Hospital. That is in order. and has been signed off on by the Department of Revenue as a $25,000 fee, has already been paid for that bill, and that would come under this bill. Representative Epps' bill with regard to the wildlife tags, which I know all of you are here and interested in, is a bill that basically changes the fee structure and reduces the fee structure for the bill on those special tags from the $35 level down to the $20 level, and changes the split between the DNR non-game wildlife and what the state general fund gets. There are I'm not sure we put the fiscal notes in the folder, but there are fiscal notes on both
Yes,
Chairman Talton's bill and Representative Epps' bill 730. I'm just going to comment historically here. Historically, prior to House Bill 1055, which we passed, I think it was probably 3 years ago. 3 years ago.
3 years ago.
When the charges for special tags were raised, and the splits were changed at that point in time with the people who were either an agency or a nonprofit who got money from these tags, they were changed at that particular point in time. Since that point in time, the non-games wildlife specifically, and most of the tags, have experienced a decline. However, based upon the report from the state auditor, many of those tags were in decline prior to 1055. In other words, they weren't being renewed. People were starting to not renew the tags. And so we find ourselves today in a situation where these bills all address separate elements of the same issue. And the question before the committee is, one, do we want to change the splits between the agencies that receive them, specifically DNR and DCH get some splits on some tags. I can't remember. I think there's 68. Is there 68 tags or 68 tags, all with different, not all with different splits, but included and included in this bill. Chairman Talton's bill changes the split so that on the $35 extra fee for the special plate, it provides for $10 going to the state and $25 going to the agency or the nonprofit who has a tag in this list.
Yes.
The only nonprofits who get money out of this immediately are the cancer research people, and there's I think 4 or 5 bills.
I got 6 of them.
Six of those tags that go to cancer research funding. With that in mind, I'll tell you what that means. Oh, I'm sorry. The rest of the bills, all the wildlife tag bills, all the Rotary bills, everything, realtors, everything in that 68 list, in Chairman Talton's bill at 2020 goes to the same split as the cancer research bill. I'm going to tell you what this means. 2015 through 2019, the impact of Chairman Talton's bill is under $100,000 a year to the state fund. It's a plus to the sponsoring agencies of around $66,000 in each one of those years, and to the nonprofits of about $27,000. So almost the whole downside to the state revenue is passed out either to the agencies or to the nonprofits. It changes in 2020 under this bill. Under this bill, there's a loss to the state general fund of $2.7 million. And the bulk of this would come from the non-game wildlife funds. The gain to DNR and the other sponsoring agencies were $1.9 million, and the nonprofit organizations is approximately $900,000. So they almost balance out in terms of what the reduction is, except that what we're doing here is saying in Chairman Talton's bill is we are designating state funds, general fund money, back into the agencies for whence they were the split was originally intended, and to the nonprofits. Only on the special tag bill. The $25 registration fee is still the $25. So so that's the nature of what we're being asked to consider here. I hope I've explained this.
You've done well. That's
Okay, but the point is that that is that's the intention of the substitute, is to consider both the tag for grading, the wildlife tags in 730, which is Representative Epps's bill, and the proposition that Mr. Talton has had. Now, with all you good folks from the non-game wildlife advocacy group, I think what we need to understand is that the large impact to the state revenue funds is delayed by this bill, but it is intended to happen in terms of funds coming back into what your interests are. The issue is the ability of the state to manage the fiscal impact of that, and that's why it's delayed to 2020. We will take the advice of the committee on this, but I would like to thank Chairman Talton for his bill. If there are any questions on the bill, please address them to Mr. Talton or myself.
13.
All right, Chairman Battles.
To my good friend,
yes, sir.
Chairman Talton. Isn't this just reestablishing something that most people, when they were going to purchase that specialty tag, thought that they were doing? Is they thought it was going to those good agencies and causes, and for years people would renew them under that impression that it was, and it was not. It was going into the deep, dark hole of the general funds.
I can appreciate that you answering it exactly, and that's the purpose of bringing this. And the sales of those tags dropped off for the fact that people were donating to the organization itself rather than buying the tags, because they said, why should they do that? And the state be taking the money they could just give to the organization, and that's what's happening now. So
Follow up.
appreciate that.
And would that not be a selling point for those people who may have dropped off and said, I'm not buying a specialty tag, when I found out that we were getting no benefit out of it? Don't we think that that would increase the sales of those specialty tags,
Exactly.
and that revenue would be able to increase?
Yes, sir.
I appreciate this bill, and I thank you for what you've done, and I think it's a benefit to our citizens that are looking to support their cause in a little different way, and I appreciate it.
Thank you very much.
I'm sure for the benefit of those people in the audience and those watching over the airwaves here, that Chairman Battles would like to rephrase his comment about the deep, dark hole of the state budget. Okay. All right. There are a number of people signed up for House Bill 730. If you'll thank you, Chairman Talton.
Thank you again. I can't thank you enough, too.
You're welcome. Is there anybody who still wants to speak on this bill, particularly on the wildlife tags? And I really, we're in a time crunch here, and with all the other bills we need to consider today. But I'd like to give you an opportunity. If you have something different to say than the speaker who previously spoke, then we'll recognize you for that. Chairman Knight, are you ready to go?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. It's 10 years here, and I've never been before the Motor Vehicle Committee.
You know, you've missed an opportunity here.
I know. We see a lot of each other on the Ways and Means Committee, but
we have a good opportunity, though. The Motor Vehicles Committee is the one that really asked the State Patrol to oversee members who do not appear in front of this committee.
I appreciate not having a visit so far. Mr. Chairman, members committee, we've got this issue going around the bill, but I want to maybe pose a little reasoning for, especially the one with the wildlife. you know, this is one of the ones there may be 2 or 3 that are actually funding one of our agencies and the work that it does. And specifically, this non-game tag was one of those. And I want to sort of throw out a phrase as, you know, we're either going to be penny wise or we're going to be pound foolish. Okay? And the issue behind this is that you have the feds that come in, and with the all these Endangered Species Act, it's my understanding that recently we've had as many as 100 more species thrown into a list to the feds that is considering those for an endangered species. And what happens is you know, they're thrown in there. My understanding is that we've got to defend it and tell people why it's not, you know, warranted. So once some of the scientists and some of the green or environmental folks throw a study out there that says a species is endangered, the feds will look at it, and we've got a lot that are in a position called warranted but precluded, meaning, hey, there's evidence, we've got evidence that says we need to put them on this list, but right now you're not at the top of our priority list to do it, but it's coming. So unless this state is going to get ready and start defending against the federal wildlife agency, or, you know, the part that is doing this, we're going to get a lot more of what we're seeing now. Y'all know Senate Bill 322 is coming over, Go for Tortoise. Guys, that's a direct action to fend off the feds from coming down here and placing, you know, the gopher tortoise and the eastern diamondback rattlesnake on this list. Okay, y'all remember in the fall this year when you heard something about the long-eared bat? Chairman Battles and I spoke this morning. Guess what, guys? Did that stop a DOT project? How many hundreds of thousands of dollars did it take, and what was the delay to it? So guys, the funds that were going into from this tag were going in to fund those biologists and those folks that were going out there and doing the surveys, the scientific data collection, okay, to make sure that we've got enough to fend off the feds and, quite frankly, excuse my French, well, I'm not so French, but a lot of the environmental folks that are coming in here trying to just throw darts, you know, about endangered species. Folks, this is going to affect us very much from our streams. Most of these are amphibious. We're already in water wars, and a lot of things have been said about the mussels and all. And so that's what these funds are for. And I would ask that the committee, as we go through this process, to weigh that. And again, are we going to be penny wise? Or are we going to be pound foolish? So that in 2, 3, 4 years, as these animals start, the feds put them on that list, what are we going to have to do then? How much did it cost us with the DOT project to go out and get the consultants to battle that data that was sent in to the feds? So I want to pose this question. This is a very serious policy question. I think we need to look at how does it affect our landowner rights, private property rights? How does it affect our ag industry, forestry industry, our streams that we fish in, love to play in, and the water in which we drink from? I think we need to look at this, guys, and make sure that we've got an adequate defense against the feds, and that's what really we need to consider when we think about this tag.
Any questions for Chairman Knight? No questions. Thank you for coming today, Chairman. I appreciate the comments. I think we're all empathetic to that situation. Let me, before I get to recognize anybody else, let me just make sure that the committee understands the fiscal impact of only moving the wildlife tag bill ahead, which I'm not planning to do today. The full year 15 revenue loss is $3.6 million. The DNR would get $1.7 million. The full year 2016 is again over $3 million, and the same applies every year through 2019 for a total of $18 million over a 5-year period. DNR in this bill would get $8.6 million as an agency contribution from those funds based upon the content of House Bill 7:30. Excuse me. I'm trying not to confuse you, but we've changed the bill. We've changed Representative Talton's bill to attempt to take care of the issue of wildlife tags. The only decision we're talking about here is the implementation time frame, because in 2020 the wildlife tags would actually get more funds than is proposed in 670 or excuse me, I'm sorry, 730. Must be getting late. So anyway, that's the proposition, and I'm ready to hear the next witness. But I would tell you that I would ask you to be to condense your comments. I think the issue is well known. I think Chairman Knight summarized very well, and I'm going to recognize Mr. Schoen. Mr. Schoen has been the one who has moved heaven and earth to try and get this issue with the wildlife tags resolved, and so we'll welcome you to the mic. Mr. Schoen, if you could just take a few moments to tell us about the bill.
Yes, sir. My name is Brooks Shane. I'm from Atlanta, and I am on the board of directors for the TURN organization. TURN is the Environmental Resource Network. We are friends of DNR Non-Game, and we support their efforts and raise money for them to help the non-game program continue to be effective for all of Georgians. Thank you, Mr. Chairman, for the opportunity to participate today, and I thank the committee members for the opportunity to present to you House Bill 730. In 1996, Senate Bill SB 205 established the wildlife tag. With tremendous success over the years, by 2009, we had 541,000 tags in service. Since passage of HB 1055 in 2010, with the increase in fees to $35, with $25 going to the state and only $10 going to the non-game program, the people of Georgia have rebelled and turned in their tags in protest. They were told that the tag was created to support the non-game program by the people of Georgia's donations. We now have lost over 400,000 tags, and our sales in the last 6 months have dropped another 16.2%. If this trend continues over the next 6 months, we'll be down over 32% in tag sales, dropping another 48,000 tags, and we'll be down to 110,000 tags this year. The state's revenue continues to decline, as well as non-game. Within 3 years, the state will only get $1.4 million from these tags. Non-game will only be getting $400,000. This current structure of pricing is a no-win situation for both of us. I have spoken with several members of leadership for the House, and they are in favor of House Bill 730. Representative Terry England, Chairman of Appropriations, said, "The non-game program is special, and I have been a supporter of it since the first tags came out many years ago." He went on to say, "Should the bill stay clean of other programs, then I will probably be supportive." Representative Matt Hatchett, Majority Caucus Chairman, told me, "I have not heard of any negative comments on HB 730. I am a hunter, and I have supported DNR, and I will support this bill." We have spoken with the administration, and they are concerned about piling on of other tags, and we have pledged to them, as well as Chairman Rice, that we will not allow this to happen. Representative Epps has encouraged discussions from several representatives, and after explaining the non-game situation, they have agreed to stand down and not jeopardize the chance of HB 730 not passing. We feel we have 95 to 98% support for this bill from the House of Representatives, and I would like to read just a short letter, if I could, from David Waller, who was the past director for the Wildlife Resources Division, and Mark Whitney is here today representing WRD. David Waller wrote this letter just the other day to House Speaker David Ralston. Hello, David, parentheses, Mr. Speaker. I hope you are doing well. It has been a while since I have communicated with you. I retired from DNR over 10 years ago. I am contacting you to encourage passage of House Bill 730. I was director of WRD when we passed the wildlife license plate bill, and it has been the life's blood of the non-game program since then. There are no state funds allocated to that program. The limited state funds that were assigned to that program originally were taken away as soon as the revenue from the tag started coming in. I don't have the space to tell you how important this funding is, but I can assure you that keeping this funding is a huge savings for the state, if for nothing else than keeping species off the federal endangered species list. As you know, I spent 32 years of my life doing wildlife conservation work for the state. It was a passion for me, and I loved every minute of it. You were always supportive of our programs. I'm telling you that this is a very important part of wildlife conservation in Georgia that needs your support. I know most folks don't understand the importance of this program, but I do. It is extremely important, and this funding, which is a donation for the non-game program, has been diverted to the state. Supporters are mad that their donation has been diverted and have quit buying the tags. As you can tell from my standpoint, this is a very critical issue with me. This program is a preventive maintenance program for declining wildlife populations. You pay a small amount now, or pay a huge amount when they become federally endangered. Please help get this bill through the House. I would love to talk to you on the phone about this. If you have a moment, call me. By the way, I have 5 grandchildren, and I am enjoying retirement. Being a full-time grandpa ain't bad. Hope everything is going well with you.
Thank you, Mr. Shane. Any questions from any of the committee members?
In closing, I would like to thank all of you for your consideration and would respectfully ask Chairman Rice to please allow a vote today on this very important legislation. If you have any questions, I'd be more than happy to try to answer.
Okay. Are there any questions for Mr. Shane? Doesn't appear to be. I've got a question for you,
yes,
and I think I posed it to you in an email.
Yes, sir.
And that is, how does the reduction in tags impact? How has it impacted the support in DNR?
Yes, sir.
For the non-game wildlife?
Yes, sir. I would like to ask if Mark Whitney could come up and speak to that as Assistant Director for WRD and answer those questions for you, because they are important.
Okay.
Mark.
Mr. Whitney? Again, we're going to need to be brief. We have about 7 other bills to take up today, so thanks for coming, and thanks for all your work on this.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman and members of the committee. I am Mark Whitney. I'm Assistant Director for Wildlife Resources Division. I will speak to some of the elements of the bill, but directly to the chairman's question. Currently, our non-game program is expending somewhere around $7 million a year. We would not see any change in that probably for the next 2 to 3 years. So immediate impacts, I would say none, except for this looming problem that Representative Knight eloquently spoke to. And if I may give you just a little bit of information that may serve to help you think about this issue maybe with a little more clarity. Currently, we got about 61 species. We do have 61 species that are on the threatened and endangered list in the state of Georgia. Fish and Wildlife Service has 132 more species. Almost 121 of those were the result of what was known as a multi-jurisdictional suit that was brought by the Center for Biological Diversity. 374 species, and we got our fair share of them. Fish and Wildlife Service has to address those, according to the suit, within the next 5 to 10 years. We've looked at that list. When this happened, it was all hands on deck. We've taken a look at that list, and we have already taken actions, talking to our partner states that share some of those species and their habitats, to look at what conservation actions, what we're calling proactive conservation, may help. One result is the bill that will be coming over, Senate Bill 322, that Representative Knight talked about, the gopher tortoise bill. But our biologists looking at it, the big problem here is we got just a lack of information on the majority of these species. We know where some of them are, but we don't know what their distribution is, and we certainly don't know what the density is. That's the kind of information we need to refute and to pull some of these species off that list. Our biologists in the non-game program say that they feel very confident that we could eliminate about half of them right off the bat. If we were going to do that within a 5-year time frame, we would have to ramp up pretty daggum quickly. We can't back funds off of what we're doing because we're using those funds that we're currently expending, $7.3 million annually, to address those other 61 species. And so if we've got to ramp up and get information, we've got to do it fast, we've got to do it with our partners, and we've got to do it with adequate funding. And that's what's raised the alarm bells for us. The funding's going down, the stakes are going up. The state of Georgia's got a responsibility because they hold those species in the public trust for the citizens. And if we can't represent that we're doing a good job and they may be threatened or endangered, that's when the feds step in and start putting restrictions on us. The long-eared bat was given as an example. That's only one. We're talking about 180 species at this point, possibly. Distribution across the state, depending on what species you're talking about. So you're impacting a whole lot more road construction projects, development projects, and just about anything else you can imagine, not to mention the private landowners who may have some of those species and restrictions that are put on them. So thank you, Mr. Chairman. I appreciate the question.
Thank you, Mr. Whitney. Are there any questions of the witness? Appreciate you coming today. Thank you so much for bringing this to our attention. I think we can excuse you right now. There were approximately 5 other people signed up to speak, or 4 other people on 7:30. I think the issue has been commented on very well by Mr. Shane and Mr. Whitney. If you have anything that you really feel desperately that you need to add, I would be happy to hear from you. Is there anybody, you have something that desperately you need to share with the committee?
Yes, Mr. Chairman.
Come on over here. Come on over there and introduce yourself.
Mr. Chairman, I'm Kevin McGrath from Trout Unlimited. As a private citizen who took time off the entire afternoon from work to come down here to talk to your committee, I do appreciate the opportunity to offer my remarks, and I'll be respectful of your schedule. We've had a 70% reduction in wildlife tags. I would submit that while there's a vast number of specialty plates here in Georgia, I'm not against that. But these wildlife tags are bills that are paid by the citizens of Georgia. Many of the other tags, while their causes are noteworthy and noble, general fund doesn't pay those. Taxpayers don't pay those bills. For the trout, the bobwhite quail, and the non-game, we do. That's what makes them special. Is we got to pay the bill anyway. And this is an opportunity for somebody like me, if I want a Trout Unlimited tag or a bobwhite quail tag or a wildlife tag, I can voluntarily take my money and send it to pay the state's bill. It's different. And as a conservative, I think that's good government. Sportsmen are big business in the state of Georgia. Their sportsman supports more jobs than Delta Airlines and Hewlett Packard combined, and more than Fort Benning, the largest single employer in the state of Georgia. Annual spending by Georgia sportsmen is 4 times the revenues of the Hawks, Braves, and Falcons combined. And the cash receipts exceed that for cotton, greenhouse nursery, eggs, and cattle, the state's top agricultural commodity. So we're not talking about funding games. We're talking about funding big business here in Georgia. It's $2.3 billion a year and close to 40,000 jobs. Just from Trout Unlimited's standpoint, some of these, the trout tag fees, they go for paying the stocking program in addition to what we already pay in trout tag fees. But the trout feed, the stocking trucks, hatchery repairs, the maps to tell people, you know, where it's legal and illegal to fish, seasonal interns, of which I'm personally responsible with that, or involved in that program, but also the sampling boat for the tailwater needs a new motor. Well, Georgia Trout Unlimited went and bought that boat years ago and the motor and put it on permanent loan to the DNR so they could get out in the Chattahoochee River, the Toccoa tailwater, and up the creeks of Lake Lanier and Lake Blackshear and Chattooga and get up there and do the walleye and bass samplings that they need to do. Well, the motor's worn out and needs to be replacing. DNR is going to use its tag funds to buy that motor. I can tell you, I personally have manned that shocking boat. The net's on the bow of it. The bow is, or the hull is wearing thin, and that boat's going to need to be replaced. And DNR has no money to buy a new boat. Now, if more funds immediately are directed to DNR, and I'm just speaking for the trout program, then they'll have the money to do that. Otherwise, they'll be hat in hand coming to the legislature looking for general fund money to do that. Or Trout Unlimited is going to step in and we'll open up our wallets and buy them another boat. But we don't think that that is necessarily the best way to go. So we think this is good. I can tell you that my friends have stopped buying tags because a disproportionate share goes to the general fund. I don't care what the cost is. If more money is going to the general fund than what the picture on the plate is, they don't want to have any part in it. And then there's a whole nother group of people that think they're just too expensive. So the waiving of the manufacturing fee, I think, incentivizes people to buy it across the board, whether it's for the wildlife tags or all the other tags. And I think that, you know, people know that it's going for the intended purpose. You will see an increase in sales where we saw for the wildlife tags across the board a 70% drop. And I thank you, sir.
Any questions?
And I do ask for a vote today and a do pass.
Well, thank you for your comments. I appreciate you coming down here and all you would do for the. I'm not either one, so I'm not on hunt or fish. I just bobbing around in a boat just doesn't seem, you know, fun to me, but that's okay. Okay, all right. For purposes of today's meeting, the proposition is this: I don't think there's anybody on this committee that doesn't regard the DNR opportunity here in support of the non-game resources as important. And I think that there's nobody here that wants to change these tag laws any more, and the splits any more than myself and the rest of the committee. I don't think anybody would vocalize a move not to do anything. The issue has to do primarily with the timing. And Mr. Talton's bill 180 calls for the timing of the splits to change, not the charge, but the splits to change, so that any agency or organization with a special tag in 2020, okay, gets $25 out of every tag sale or renewal. The state gets 10. You've heard the comments about the budgetary impact of Representative Epps' bill, and I'd ask if there's any discussion on the bill itself. Is there anybody who wants to comment on the bill or discussion concerning it? Okay, if that's the case, I would entertain a motion on a due pass motion for 1A. The move, it's been moved. Is there a second? There's a second. Okay, that's the question. All in favor of moving House Bill 180, signify by saying aye. Opposed? I think the bill passes. I'm sorry, by substitute. Okay, we're moving on. Thank you for all your help on this. I hope that we can work this out in terms of the timing and everything. Okay, I'm going to take up quickly, and I think this will be fairly quick. I'm going to take up Chairman Powell's bill. If Chairman Powell, if you would do 753, and while you're up there, if you could do 621, I'd appreciate it. No, I'm sorry, we're not going to do 621. The substitute's not ready for that, Chairman Powell. It's 878, right? Yeah, let's do 753 and then 878. If you're going to leave, I appreciate you leaving quietly. If take the conversations out in the hall, and we'd appreciate it very much. Yeah, we're going to look at Representative Powell's bills, which would be 753 and 878. And both of these are bills that the chair would like to move today if the committee agrees.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman and gentlemen of the committee. I started to say ladies and gentlemen, but I don't see any ladies on the committee, even though it's questionable at times. Just a little humor.
You're working with a substitute?
You should have in front of you a substitute, LC 410208S.
Yep.
All right. Started out as very simple. I thought this was going to be the easiest, and it is a pretty simple department bill. This is the annual Department of Public Safety's housekeeping bill. If you'll look on the first section 1, this is clarifying state of emergency. Now, this was the amended version after the storm of 3 weeks ago. You know, everybody saw some other things they wanted to do, like some other criteria for public safety during the time of a storm. So this is your clarification of a state of an emergency being declared. That just adds to the existing language. If you'll go to the second, to line 27, where you see the word motor coach after bus, you know, we've become such a society that a bus don't just mean a bus anymore, but they wanted to add motor coach. That's for the high-end crowd, as I call it, the Uberizing variety. If you look down on line 34, this adds provided by rules and regulations, and what this says is that's not just change, that puts it into the hands of the commissioner, that by rules and regs of the commissioner of the Department of Public Safety, not just chains for trucks, but also cables, studs, and any other type of products that are good for use in those type of conditions. Going back to the original purpose of the bill in section 2, line 43, this was, you may remember at the last meeting, the Prosecuting Attorneys Council came forward, and this is clarifying language. It says violations of federal regulations or also violations of Georgia regulations. A lot of the prosecutors had said that they were having trouble prosecuting cases because of that, so this clarifying language is clarifying language. It says that federal regs violated are the same as state regs being violated. And then the remaining language is just generally basically catch-all language on equipment. As new equipment is developed for these commercial rigs, then they need to have the ability to set by rule and reg what it is. Ladies and gentlemen, that's, I'm sorry, if you will go to section 3, this was a gist of going back to the definition in section 1. When that storm hit about 3 or 4 weeks ago, the one that everybody was sort of caught off guard or didn't listen to the weather reports or such, you know, there were certain problems with on the interstates inside the metro areas where a lot of the commercial vehicles got caught off guard, didn't have chains, and what this language basically says is that if there's a declared state of an emergency at that particular time, this is clarifying language that these big trucks can't be within that, within this definition, like inside the areas of 85 and such as that. That's what that language would do. unless they, of course, got specific things. They just can't use it as a thoroughfare. If they're going to their home terminal or going for repairs or deliveries, yes. But just to use the inside of the perimeter and such as a thoroughfare, they can't if it's been deemed a weather emergency. If they do that, and if you go to line 170 at the end of it, that a driver that fails to comply can be fined $150 under normal conditions. If they don't have the chains and the appropriate safety devices on their, or they attempt to have the safety devices during an ice storm, then they could be fined up to $1,000. Department of Public Safety bill has been basically signed off by the motor truckers and the commercial folks in the state. And I think, I don't know, I'm hoping it was because of time that they're not going to talk about it, but if they want to, that's certainly up to the chair. But I present this to the committee.
Mr. Kroll, would you care to comment on the bill or not? Come on up. Run.
I get this far. Mr. Chairman, members of the committee, Ed Kroll, Georgia Motor Trucking Association. I want to comment only to say that this is a great example of the industry, Department of Public Safety, working well together under the leadership of Chairman Powell. It's a bill that will help us ensure what happened on the 28th won't happen again. We all want to be part of ensuring that. The National Weather Service told us that that particular event had never happened since they kept records beginning in 1887. So when people look back in 2141, I want them to know we got it fixed. You know, the next time it happens 140 years from now. But seriously, this is a good bill. We're all for it, and we appreciate you taking the time.
Good.
Thank you.
Thank you. Chairman Powell, are there any questions for the chairman? There are no questions. I only have one question, Chairman Powell. Does this allow me to put studded tires on my front wheels?
And if you have a concealed weapons permit, you can also pack them in your
Is there anybody else in the audience who would like to comment on this 753? Seeing none, entertain a motion. All right, all in favor of passage 753, say aye. Aye. Opposed? By substitute. I am sorry. All right. Okay. I think they've got it. All right, Mr. Powell, come on back. You're there.
Thank you again, Mr. Chairman and ladies and gentlemen of the committee. I bring to you House Bill 878. This is sort of a throwback to the earlier days of the Motor Vehicle Committee. This isn't quite as sexy as talking about prestige tags and things like that. This is the kind of stuff that there's not many of us that remembers it, but this is the kind of stuff we used to sit here for hours and talk about on motor vehicles. This deals with abandoned motor vehicles, providing for the disposition of the proceeds of those that have been deemed abandoned and how they're disposed of. If you'll look on line starting on line 13 and 15, that's the gist of a lot of this. Currently, when they file liens, it's currently says for reasonable fees. And what they're asking, what the wrecker industry, towing and wrecker industry is asking for, is it because of increased cost of doing business. And it's been several years since they have been able to deal with their recovery of these charges. They're asking for all fees, not just what's considered to be reasonable. So that means that when they set a fee, whether it's a fee for the towing charge or for the storage charge, then they can get that fee, whatever is considered industry standards, as opposed to what is that, quote, reasonable. And quite honestly, I go back 25 years, and I don't know why it was always reasonable. If you'll look also at the date when they're talking about running the advertisement to auction off an abandoned vehicle, then they're asking that those fees also, that they be able to charge those fees up until the time of the retrieval or the public sale. So if they call for a sale, that it doesn't stop 3 weeks before there's an auction, so they can be paid for their charges for the towing. If you look about the lien foreclosure, proceeds are the same, and then the other noticeable change would be on section 3. Under the current system, if there's an abandoned motor vehicle, Once it goes through the process, the legal process, advertising and all of that, and it goes up for sale. Once it is sold at public auction, the current procedure is that once that lien holder receives their payment, then the balance of that money goes to the county. That's basically how it works. But quite frankly, the way the industry operates today, they're receiving about 40 cents on the dollar of what they're losing a good bit of money off of what that vehicle sells, because it's not selling for as much as it should be. So what they're asking for is that we let them divide the proceeds with the local governments. Now, I will tell you that if anyone has as a throwback to history, we sat in here, I remember one committee meeting years ago, and we argued for hours about contents of the vehicle. This doesn't affect the contents. Trust me, we ain't gonna get into Grandma's pill bottle or Uncle Jack's golf clubs or anything like that. So we're not talking about any of those fees. We're not adding any other fees to it. Removal fees, storage fees, notification, advertising, all those stay the same. We're just saying we're moving it to the total cost of the fee instead of reasonable, and then allowing them to split the sale.
There's a question here for Chairman Powell from Chairman Battles.
Thank you, my friend. The question is that normally these abandoned vehicles, even if they have a lien on that vehicle, they realize they're not going to get. It's kind of like buy here, pay here. They just let it go.
Right.
What about the deficit? Someone picks that vehicle up, tows it in, they put it in a store or impound lot for a period of time. All those fees begin to mount up. Do they just realize that they may be losing money if that lien holder does not respond, or is that lien holder in any way responsible for any deficit between what they might sell it for and what is actually owing on that for those fees collected? Or
I think I'm following your question.
I was trying to be as confusing as possible because you can read between the lines there.
Let me,
Mr. Chairman, you can
ask Paige.
Have Paige approach.
Step forward for a minute. Probably the most knowledgeable person
I
that I
agree.
know,
I've
Paige
heard from
Porter
her.
in the towing industry.
And it's John Halberton also with her.
Hi, I'm Paige Porter with the Towing Association, Towing and Recovery Association of Georgia. And to answer that question, if I understand it correctly, is if a vehicle has gone to auction, and if there is a difference from that fee that was purchased at the auction, that I was paid to the lien holder. If there's a difference, there is not actions taken against that lien holder beyond the auction. So if we sell a car and there's if we sell a car, we foreclose on a car for $1,000, and we get $500 from the auction. We get $500 from the auction. We go to the bank and deposit it. That's the end of any process.
Okay. You've answered the question. Thank you.
Any other questions for any of the witnesses? Okay. Thank you very much, Mr. Chairman. Any discussion? Committee? Then make a motion on the bill. Chairman Battles.
So I move that House Bill, let me get it back to 878. Do pass.
Is there a second? All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? Thank you, Mr. Chairman Powell. Appreciate it. All righty. All right. I think we're moving apace at this point in time. Mr. Pack, I think you've got a short bill, so let me invite you to come up and tell us about HB 566.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, members of the committee. HB 566, I'm working off of a committee substitute that should be in your folder, and the number is LC 390578S. Basically, this bill was brought to me as a result of a constituent who was actually a vehicle mechanic, and he was fixing a car that couldn't pass the emission test. As a result, the car had an expired tag, and during the repair portion of the emission, he had to test drive the car to make sure that the emission test and the emission diagnostic system was working. During that time, he was pulled over by a police officer, was ticketed for driving with an expired tag. Obviously, he couldn't pass that cost to the client, so he, as a repair mechanic, ate that, and he felt that that was a very unfair situation. As a result, he asked me to take a look at the code. Basically, all this says is if you are a properly licensed mechanic by the municipality or local government, and that you're doing a repair for the emission test, that if you have a work order that's within 14 days of the day that you're test driving, that you are pretty much immune from being ticketed for driving with an expired tag. And that's all the bill does. I'd be happy to answer any questions.
Any questions for the witness? Yeah. Any questions at all? We talked about the original bill, Representative Pack, and the original bill did not have a fence in it to make sure that any auto mechanic couldn't just drive a car saying that he was fixing it. Basically, what you've done in your substitute is to say that they have to have documentary evidence that they are working on the car from the standpoint of an emissions test. Is that
That's
correct?
Yes.
All right. Any other questions for Mr. Pack? I think it's a good bill and something that the guy who's fixed my car has come to me and asked for. So I think it's a great bill. I think you've done a good job with the substitute. I hear a motion on the bill on 566. Okay. All right. Second. Second is heard. All in favor, say aye. Aye. Opposed, like sign. No. Thank you, Mr. Pack. You're
Thank
on the
you,
rules.
Chairman and members of the committee.
Substitute.
By
By
come
substitute.
on, by substitute. I can't keep it straight. Sorry, guys. I'll tell you what, everything's a substitute here. All right. Mr. Shaw, you've been sitting there. How do you feel out there? I mean, do your legs feel a little, stoved up or anything? Or
Does it feel kind of like olive oil?
All right.
Well, thank you, Mr.
Seriously,
Chairman
Mr.
and
Shaw,
members
thank
of the committee. And I'm going to pat myself on the back. I've had some more patience than I've ever had today. No. But I bring to you House Bill 88 and the substitute to House Bill 88. Actually, it's LC 390655S. The substitute, we had to change the effective date because this bill was actually dropped last year. And what this bill does, it affects volunteer firemen, actually only the certified volunteer firemen. Y'all know I'm from the deep south of the state, and the volunteer firemen that I've grown up watching are some of the most passionate and dedicated individuals that I've ever seen. And this idea came to me by one of the volunteer fire chiefs in my district, and I thought it was a great idea. And the reason we didn't push it too hard last year is that we were having some trouble just finding out some of the numbers, exactly how many people are affected by this, how many volunteer firemen are certified. We had a physical note ran last year, and then but it turned out some new numbers we had recently from the department, they're about the same as what the physical note was last year. There's a total current number is 1,734 certified volunteer firefighters in Georgia that we know of. And what this bill would do would allow them to get the Class E or F driver's license and not pay a fee for it. So currently it's $20 for a 5-year license, or I think $32 for a 8-year license. So we're not talking about a lot of money not a big effect to the state. I personally thought it would probably have been more, to be honest. So I think it's something we could do and not cost us a lot, and show our appreciation for these dedicated firefighters. And but like I said, the bill only applies to the certified, not the registered, just the certified, because there's actually a total of a lot more registered. So we wanted to just and there's a positive effect to this that's, I think, indirectly, is that what I've found in dealing with this is that a lot of our volunteer firemen actually don't even have this Class E or F license that they're technically supposed to have to drive a firefighter a vehicle. Emergency vehicle. So if anything, I think we would help them, entice them to go get the proper certification or license by telling them there's no charge for it. Because these guys, they get out there and volunteer their time, and they're passionate about it. I just wanted to try to do them and show them our appreciation for their hard work by at least not charging them to get the license they need to drive the fire truck.
Thank you for your presentation. Question from Chairman Battles. Okay, you're going to waive. Any other? Oh, I'm sorry. Okay, you've been lit up, I guess.
Mr. Chairman, there were some others that might have wanted to speak to it, but I'll just tell you that it's supported by the municipal associations, GMA, and Southeast Firefighters Burn Foundation, and the Fire Chiefs Association, and the Firemen's Association.
And the question I would have is the fence on this. Are there other organizations who would come by the same way, looking for an exemption on their driver's license payment?
Yeah, and that's what you and I have talked about in depth, and that's why I actually had a substitute to make it all registered volunteers, so that's why I changed it to just the certified volunteers. To my knowledge, I don't know of any other groups out there that are doing this kind of work that are doing it on a truly voluntary basis.
You want to speak into a microphone there, Mr. Powell, Chairman Powell? Sorry about that.
Retirement. Not that I'm aware of, not a volunteer, because they're not on any kind of, I don't know how you could put a pension on somebody that's not on any kind of payroll. Well, you've been here a lot longer than I have, that's for sure, but I have not, I'm not aware of that.
Sorry.
I guess the question is if they would,
for you, I think.
Yeah, if they're paying into that.
Mr. Powell, you have a, is that your question? Okay. Which qualifies them differently than other population groups, probably. Okay. All right. Mr. Stover.
The Class E license, does it replace your regular driver's license like the Class C license does?
Yeah, I think it is a commercial license. I know somebody from driver services.
DDS should comment on that. Is it endorsement on the license? Is that how it works?
So they're having to pay for their normal license anyway. All we're doing is shifting them to a Class E when they pay for the normal license.
If they're already a C holder, effectively, they've paid for their license. If they are certified and desire to get this license, then they would not pay for the license under this bill. Is that what?
That's correct.
I think that's the interpretation. Is that
okay. So yeah, because they've already got to pay for their license anyway. Why are we taking away?
No, originally they pay for it, but if they're certified, if they become certified, then the next time they re-up, they wouldn't have to pay for it. Okay. Correct? I think that's correct.
That's correct.
Another question? Okay. I think there are any well, there are hardly any people left in the audience. You want to bring the DNR people back in again, because we're getting a little light here. Anyway, that was meant to be funny. Anyway, I see no other questions. Thank you so much for bringing the bill, Mr. Shaw. We appreciate it. I'll entertain a motion on the bill at this point in time. Do pass. Is there a second? Second. All right. All in favor of House Bill 88 by substitute? I got it right this time. 0655S.
Hey, you learned.
Thank you. say aye. Aye. Opposed, like sign. Thank you, Mr. Shaw. You're moving on to rules.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
There's one left, guys and gals. It's Mr. Representative Mabra has an interesting bill. So come on, Mr. Mabra. Do you really think Georgia Tech has a chance of succeeding next year, Mr. Mabra? In football, I mean.
The mic is on, right?
Yes,
I do.
820. Yes. This is 827, by the way.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, members of the committee. Brings me great pleasure to bring before you House Bill 827. As I begin, I want to give you a quote from one of my favorite coaches, college football coaches, and that's Paul Bear Bryant. He says, "The will to win matters not. Everyone has that will. But it's the will to prepare to win that matters." And this is what my bill is about. Right now, high school student athletes, teenagers, Class C driver's license, cannot drive between 12 and 6 a.m. in the morning. Most high schools start at 7 a.m. or even 8 a.m. So for the student athlete to get to school, get a workout in the weight room, run on the track, practice drills, get showered, get to homeroom, they can't do it. And so we're not giving our student athletes the proper ability to prepare to win. And as a former student athlete, I come before you today to say, hey, let's move that time from 6 back to 5 a.m. to give athletes the ability to get to school, use their facilities that are there for them, to build up their endurance, to get stronger in the weight room, to work on their speed, to work on their coordination, and to be able to prepare for the upcoming seasons. I think this is a good bill. I have good support from former student athletes as well, and I ask for your favorable consideration on this bill, and I'll take any questions.
Well presented, Mr. Mabry, but Mr. Powell has a question for you. Representative Chairman Powell.
Well, I am an attorney, though.
Sure. All right. Darryl?
To all the colleges, because understand you were a member of the football team, but I was wondering if those would apply to Mercer too,
Well, it really just applies to high school students drivers between 16 and 18 years old. Okay. Yeah, but most of those people will be going to Tech. They're going to take advantage of it, and they're going to get up early, and they're going to work out. So a lot of these student athletes will be going to Tech. Thank you.
Mr. Mabry, you recognize the historicity of this particular moment in your life, don't you? Do you recognize what it is?
Yes, I do.
No one from Georgia Tech has ever passed a bill through this committee.
Really?
Yeah. Did you know
that? This is my first time presenting the bill in Motor Vehicles Committee. That's what I thought it was. Wow.
Okay. Thank you for your presentation. I think the TADRA law has been around for a long time, and that 6 a.m. time may have met its point in time for reconsideration. And the 5 a.m., I think even my grandchildren would say that that's probably a good idea. So thank you for bringing the bill. I'll entertain a motion on the bill. So moved. Is there a second? Okay. In terms of passing House Bill 827 LC 410142, not by substitute, do I hear the yeas on it?
Yay.
Nays? No nays. Thank you an awful lot.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman and members of the committee.
Finally.